Hello everyone, welcome to BAJIRAO IAS Academy, the Hindu Newspaper Analysis. In today's discussion, we will understand few important news articles that are given in the Hindu newspaper. So before discussing those news articles, let's solve the previous year question that is being given in tomorrow's class. Okay, so the question was, who among the following economists introduced the term human development, and based on that the Human Development Index was designed? The correct answer for this question is D, that is both Mehboob Haq and Amartya Sen have introduced the term human development based on the capabilities approach. Generally, Amartya Sen is known for the capability approach. So yesterday we have discussed about the Human Development Index and India's 134th rank in the Human Development Index. Please remember, it is important question and you should also understand and identify the key indicators based on which the Human Development Index of different countries is calculated. Let's proceed on to the next question. So today's practice question is with respect to bitcoins. This is also a previous year question that is being asked by the UPSC. So bitcoin is a currency. Okay, this is a form of digital currency that based on the blockchain technology. So therefore in this context it is very important. So the question is with reference to bitcoins which are sometimes seen in use, which of the following statements are correct? So the statements are, bitcoins are tracked by the central banks of the countries. This is the first statement. Second statement says, anyone with a bitcoin address can send and receive bitcoins from anyone else with a bitcoin address. This is the second statement. Third statement, online payments can be sent without either side knowing the identity of the other. So these are these three statements based on Bitcoin question. So please answer this question in the comment section. Now let's proceed on to the today's important news articles discussion. See, this is one important news articles regarding the Gaganyaan mission. Gaganyaan mission. So this particular article is given in the Indian Express newspaper. We all know that Gaganyaan is an India's manned space mission. ISRO has been making rapid advancements with respect to conducting a Gaganyaan mission as soon as possible in the next year. So therefore, this particular article talks about the Gaganyaan mission and other ambitious science programs, science projects of India. So first we will try and understand what exactly is the Gaganyaan mission. So Gaganyaan mission, as I have already told you, it is India's first manned space flight. The project was launched by or approved by the Government of India on August 15, 2008. Please remember, so far we have launched 3 missions onto Moon. In a similar manner, the Government of India approved Gaganyaan mission in August 15, 2018. So it will send 3 crew members to the space and they will spend at least 7 days. Okay, so actually due to COVID-19 pandemic, this has got further delayed. Now this particular mission would be implemented either at the end of the 2024 or in the beginning of 2025. So ISRO has been planning to use or deploy the biggest rocket, that is GSLV Mark III, for this particular project of Gaganyaan. Now apart from that, it also have some of the interesting details. So those are, it would be one of the cheapest manned space flight. Now across the world there are only 3 countries which have sent human beings successfully into space. So those countries are US, China and Russia. Now if India's Gaganyaan mission becomes successful, India will become an allied club of nations, or India will join an allied club of nations which send human beings into space. So India will become the 4th country to send humans into the space. However, if you look at the total cost of the mission, it is just 10,000 crore. it is much lesser than several advanced countries spending on their space programs. After that, India plans to call its astronauts as Vyomonauts. We will not call these astronauts as astronauts, rather we call them as Vyomonauts. So here in Sanskrit, Vyom means space. Because of that reason, we call astronauts as Vyomonauts. So these are the 4 Vyomonauts that the government of India has declared. So these individuals who are part of the Indian Air Force will be sent through the Gaganyaan mission. Okay, so these are the Vyomonauts. Now apart from that, the Indian Space Agency ISRO hopes to launch the first mission within 40 months from the date of approval. However, this was not possible because of the COVID-19 pandemic, and the mission has got further delayed. So it is true that India will become the 4th country, because as I have already told you that before India, US, Russia and China have sent human beings into space, and India will become the next country or 4th country to send humans into space, followed by that. So you can also remember the names of the Vyomonauts that India has recently announced, who are Group Captain Prashant Balakrishnayer, Group Captain Ajit Krishnan, Group Captain Angad Pratap, and Wing Commander Subhanshu Shukla. So these were 4 Indian Air Force officers selected for the Gaganyaan program. Now, what this particular article has been talking about with respect to the Gaganyaan mission. With the success of Gaganyaan, India's first human space flight mission, what it could mean for India's scientific community, we will delve deep into that. Firstly, please understand, India earlier this month have revealed the names of 4 Air Force officers. Before this slide, I have already told you who are those 4 Indian Air Force officers. So those 4 Indian Air Force officers are selected for the Gaganyaan mission. Okay. So Gaganyaan mission is actually country's first attempt to sending humans into the space. Under Gaganyaan program, 3 Vyomonauts will be sent into the space. Apart from that, it is scheduled to launch, the Gaganyaan program is scheduled to launch next year. So therefore, it would have the first Indian astronauts or Vyomonauts in 40 years, and the first one to go into the Indian spacecraft. Okay, so one thing that we need to understand, that earlier Rakesh Sharma was the first Indian to enter into the space. However, these 3 Vyomonauts will fly by Indian spacecraft, and that is the major difference. However, before that, only 3 countries have made this feat possible: US, Russia, China, as I have already told you, and they have successfully executed their human space flight missions till now. Followed by that, a successful mission for ISRO, mission by ISRO would ultimate demonstration of its capability. Now ISRO would demonstrate its capability of sending humans into space through the Gaganyaan mission. We all know about that. That will have a lot of spin-off technologies. When I say spin-off technologies, the technologies which get derived from this particular mission. So we will discuss those spin-off missions as well. So therefore, the Gaganyaan holds a much bigger significance than just technology demonstration, and this is what the author has been saying. So what that much bigger significance, we will understand when we go deep into this particular topic. After that, why India wants to have a stake in space technologies. Every Indian or every common man often gets the question that why India wants to have stake in space technologies. Not even the common man, even some educated people also have the doubt that why a country like India has been investing in space. Why India has a space program despite having a lot of problems or challenges. So in this context, we will understand the spin-off technologies of such a space program or investing in space technologies. Firstly, we need to understand more than 600 people from about 50 different countries have traveled to the space so far. Okay, so not just India, but different countries. Astronauts have they are already in space. Okay, so they visited space. 600 people from different countries, 50 different countries, they already traveled to space. However, a country to execute human space flight, it is very difficult. It is a very complicated mission. Even though 50 different countries have sent their astronauts into space, they have sent primarily from either US, China or Russia spacecrafts. However, sending astronauts through their own aircrafts is not a common thing. It is very difficult, very complicated, and it involves a lot of novelty as well. So therefore, becoming an active participant in this new age science space exploration. So when I say space exploration, recently we have seen intense competition between different superpowers with respect to landing their spacecraft in moon, whether it is Russia, India or China. So therefore, we can say that we are in a new age of space exploration. And in this particular context, this new age space exploration would ensure access to rights, access to resources, and access to new technologies. So all these benefits have a lot of spin-off benefits. Okay, so India could build the expertise and the opportunities from these technologies that we have already developed and already demonstrated through the space technologies. Okay, so because the technologies which are developed by ISRO are very often transferred to the industries as well, in batteries manufacturing, powerful batteries manufacturing for electronic vehicles. So therefore, technology development and technology demonstration by one industry will have a lot of spin-off effects, a lot of positive effects on other sectors as well. However, if we discuss further, it wants to ensure that it gains access and control over the novel technologies. So please understand, novel technologies are very important for any country and its development and economic growth. When we do not have the novel technologies, we need to ask for the technology from other countries. We will increase our dependence on other countries, so that will cost us. So therefore, through the technology development and technology demonstration, we can gain access and control over the novel technologies. So those technologies very often become critical in India's economic growth, economic development, and a bright future. Because of that reason, we wanted to develop the space technologies. We wanted to invest in space. So in fact, the space programs in the past, if you look at the space programs in the past, so they have resulted in hundreds of spin-off technologies, hundreds of benefits. So what are those benefits? For example, they have important applications in health and medicine field. So when I say health and medicine, applications include the magnetic resonance imaging or MRI, and heart implants and advanced water filtration. So these technologies are primarily derived from the space technologies. So such spin-off technologies will benefit the country as a whole. That helps in building equity in the society. That also helps in creating an inclusive and sustainable environment. Okay, however, sustaining human space flight program, so we cannot sustain the human space flight program without solid and concrete efforts. So therefore, sustaining human space flight program would also force the development of science and technology ecosystem. So this would also force the development of science and technology ecosystem in India. However, this will ensure that India will never again ends up at the receiving end of technology denial regimes. Earlier, technology was denied for India. What if India herself develops a technology and uses the technology for the benefit of the people in the country. So therefore, we can prevent effectively the technology denial regimes from other countries. After that, the need to avoid technology denial. Why we should avoid the technology denial by other countries, whether it is US, Russia, or any other country. So we should avoid this particular technology denial, and we should develop the self-reliance in these technologies. India in the past has suffered because of the technology denial policies of other countries, US, Russia. Okay, so with respect to access to technology, and that is very often used as a blackmail measure. So in fact, when India approached these countries, then very often these countries uses this particular technology as a blackmail measure. So therefore, when we have our own technology, we no longer, or countries which have the blackmail regime no longer resort to these practices of blackmailing countries like India. So therefore, we need to develop our own technologies. After that, we can discuss a small example here. In the year 1990s, the US has denied India the cryogenic technology. Okay, so India has sought cryogenic technology, and cryogenic technology is very important for India's space program, India's own space program. However, in 1990s, US denied India's cryogenic technology. So cryogenic technology is very important and very critical for powering rockets. However, please remember, India has always maintained friendly ties or friendly relations with Russia. But due to the collapse of USSR, Russia, under the pressure of US, denied to provide critical technologies like cryogenic technology to India. So therefore, India has reverse engineered these cryogenic technologies, and therefore it has developed the cryogenic technology on its own. Followed by that, it slowed down India's space program almost 2 decades. Since we do not have the cryogenic technology, that has slowed down India's space program by around 2 decades. So that is around 20 years. And after India conducted the nuclear tests in the year 1998, we all know that India has conducted nuclear tests in the year 1998. So even basic parts like certain kinds of transistors, semiconductors are actually denied due to the economic sanctions that are being imposed on India for conducting these nuclear tests. So because of this reason, we should develop technologies our own. However, there are certain new science and technology projects that are being announced by the government recently. What are those projects? We will understand briefly. So in the last couple of years, the government has announced separate missions on green hydrogen. So that is National Green Hydrogen Mission. So the National Green Hydrogen Mission has focused on making India a hub of green hydrogen production and export. Followed by that, India has also launched the quantum computing mission. And followed by that, the latest one is artificial intelligence mission, and a national policy on deep tech was launched. So all these policies have been aimed at developing critical technologies, and those critical technologies will ultimately help India in achieving the greater heights in its developmental path. Followed by that, India has joined some of the biggest international scientific projects in recent past. So what are those important developmental projects? First and foremost, we need to talk about the Laser Interferometry Gravitational Wave Observatory, or LIGO. So this is one project, and that studies the gravitational waves and its impact on planet Earth. So after that, India is also part of the Square Kilometer Array, which would involve building several facilities within the country. So these are the different programs that are being launched by the government of India in recent past. However, if you look at this recent interim budget by the government of India in the year 2024, the government has actually announced around 1 lakh crore. So this 1 lakh crore of fund will provide a long-term, low-cost or zero interest loans for research and development in India. So that particularly aid in research and development in India, and this 1 lakh crore will be given as loans. It also promised to launch a new scheme for promoting deep tech capabilities in the defense sector. Please also understand, we have dependent on other countries for our defense imports. So therefore, developing the domestic defense ecosystem is very important, and at the same time we need to diversify our defense markets. So this deep tech capabilities development will help India to give further push to existing India's defense industry. However, scientists say that these initiatives, launching all these initiatives, a welcome step by the government. However, those initiatives may lose steam unless there is a sustained attention and engagement from the government side. However, the Indian education system and the science have been facing a lot of issues with respect to research, with respect to academic, and with respect to R&D spending, all those issues. And at the same time, India as a country should reduce the brain drain as well in this particular field, so that we can give further fillip to India's space projects and India's science and technology oriented projects, and that will ultimately help India through its spin-off technologies. So that's it about this particular news article, and this is what the author has been discussed about the Gaganyaan mission and other technologies. So next, very important news article. So this is with respect to the electoral bonds scheme. We all know that Supreme Court has heard about the electoral bonds in February 15. So in this particular February 15 judgment, a constitutional bench that has decided the constitutional validity of the electoral bonds. Since the electoral bonds are anonymous in nature, the Supreme Court has declared them as unconstitutional and invalid because they are violating several provisions of the Indian Constitution and different other provisions. So therefore, in this context, we will understand this particular article. Supreme Court asks why State Bank of India didn't give all the details of poll bonds. So if we can talk about the background of this, I have already told you that Supreme Court has declared that the electoral bonds were unconstitutional. So apart from declaring electoral bonds as unconstitutional, Supreme Court has also directed the State Bank of India to declare the details of all electoral bonds by March 12, so that the Election Commission of India would publish the details of electoral bonds. When I say the details of electoral bonds, who purchased the electoral bonds, how much amount they have purchased, to which political party they have donated these electoral bonds, on which date they have donated these electoral bonds, will this particular SBI will provide all those details to the Supreme Court, and in turn the Election Commission of India would publish those details. However, in earlier lectures we have understood that the State Bank of India has sought time till June to submit the details of electoral bonds. However, the Supreme Court has refused. However, in compliance with the Supreme Court norms, SBI has published the details or given details of electoral bonds to Supreme Court. However, the Supreme Court has again said that the State Bank of India has not provided all the details of poll bonds that we sought. This is the issue, and we will understand, this is the electoral bond, and we will understand all those things in a bit detailed manner. So first understand, the Supreme Court in February 15th judgment had required the State Bank of India to provide the Election Commission of India with a complete details with respect to the electoral bonds. So the details include dates of purchase of these electoral bonds and the names of purchasers who purchased these electoral bonds, the denominations of these bonds purchased, along with the details of bonds which are redeemed by the political parties. And apart from that, this particular details will also include dates of encashment and denominations of the electoral bonds. So the Supreme Court on February 15 requested or required the State Bank of India to provide all those details within 1 month. However, as I have already told you that the State Bank of India has requested for some time. However, the Supreme Court has refused and asked to submit those details by March 12, and the State Bank of India has submitted those details on the electoral bonds. However, the Supreme Court has said that the State Bank of India has not submitted all the details as we have asked. This is the actual issue. Now, apart from that, the State Bank of India had said a total of 22,217 electoral bonds were purchased so far, and 22,030 were redeemed by the political parties, because this was the time when electoral bonds were issued, and this was the time when Supreme Court declared electoral bonds as unconstitutional. Okay. So apart from that, the Supreme Court on March 15 sought a response from the State Bank of India. Okay, so the response was on the non-disclosure of a unique alphanumeric numbers of individual electoral bonds. What are these unique alphanumeric numbers of individual electoral bonds? We will understand a little later. Okay. So therefore, the State Bank of India has not published the details of these unique alphanumeric numbers of individual electoral bonds to the Election Commission of India, because once the State Bank of India publishes those details, Election Commission of India will publish those details in its official website. Okay, so that will be in the official domain for the scrutiny by the public. The Supreme Court has directed the State Bank of India for the disclosure of specifically all the details of the electoral bonds. So that includes, the details include the purchase, the amount, the names of the purchasers, and the political parties who purchased those electoral bonds, and who redeemed these electoral bonds, everything. Okay. So therefore, the bank has not disclosed the numbers of the bonds which are purchased and enacted. Okay. So bank has not disclose these numbers of the bonds which purchased and encashed. So this is the issue. Now here we will understand whatever we have discussed in a detailed manner. So as I have already told you that Supreme Court has strongly disapproved the decision to not to disclose the unique serial number, so that are being linked to each electoral bond when it submitted information for the public release, because State Bank of India will not release directly those information to the public. Rather, the Election Commission of India will release the information. So what is this unique serial number? That we need to understand. So under 2018 electoral bond scheme, because electoral bonds were introduced in the year 2018. So each electoral bond is imprinted with a unique number. Right, so each electoral bond will have a unique number, so that particular number can assert or assist in tracking the issuance and redemption of bonds, and in tracking the bond back to the purchaser. However, the State Bank of India has not provided this particular unique serial number to the Supreme Court, and therefore the Supreme Court has asked to provide all the details with respect to the electoral bonds. Followed by that, full disclosure of all the details was sought by the Supreme Court from the State Bank of India. So therefore the court ordered full disclosure of electoral bond purchased and those redeemed by the political parties, as it struck down the scheme of political funding on February 15. We all know about that. It is said that the scheme is completely anonymized contributions made to the political parties, and added that restricting black money or illegal election financing did not justify violating voters' right to information in the disproportionate manner. What Supreme Court said on this particular judgment, we will understand that in a little while. So first try and understand briefly what are these electoral bonds. So electoral bonds are actually bonds. Okay, so they are sold 4 times a year. Okay, electoral bonds are a bond issued by the State Bank of India. Only State Bank of India issues these electoral bonds, and these bonds will be sold 4 times a year. 4 times a year. So through the electoral bonds, politicians or the political parties accept money from the donors whose identities are kept anonymous, and they are also sold multiples of 1,000, 10,000, 1 lakh, 10 lakh, 1 crore. So there's no upper limit of funding the political parties by the donors. Okay, so the scheme was first floated in 2018 and it was started implementing in the year 2017 and 2018 it started implementing. Okay, for example, imagine an individual who is running a company, or individual himself, he wanted to contribute some amount of money X to a political party called A. He cannot directly pay the money to the political party. Rather, there is a bank called SBI, State Bank of India, and this particular individual need to go to the State Bank of India and purchase the electoral bond for the money that he wanted to donate to the particular political party A. Once he purchased the electoral bond, and then he can submit the electoral bond with the political party that he wanted to give, that is political party A. So this electoral bond is received by political party A, and this particular political party will deposit the electoral bond with the State Bank of India and redeem the cash into its account. So this is how the electoral bond scheme actually works. The other thing that you need to understand here, this particular individual cannot purchase an electoral bond through cash, either digital payment or through check. Only he can purchase this particular electoral bond. Thereby there will be no chance or no possibility of black money. Okay, so therefore everything will be taxed because everything is financed or funded through formal channels. This is how the electoral bonds actually work. Now here, who can sell the electoral bonds? As I have already told you that the State Bank of India is the only or sole authorized bank that sell or redeem these bonds. So customers and customers of other banks can also purchase these bonds via different payment channels provided to them. However, the political party can only redeem these bonds from one of the 29 authorized branches of the bank. Okay, so the political parties cannot redeem these bonds, but only 29 authorized banks of the State Bank of India. So which parties receive donations via electoral bonds? So the party must also have to have at least 1% of vote share in most recent general elections or assembly elections to receive donations via electoral bonds. Okay, so this is the criteria of receiving electoral bonds by these different political parties. So after that, we will understand certain arguments against these electoral bonds. So what are those arguments? For example, there will be no information on which party receives funding from which company. So essentially, voters will not know any information with respect to the electoral funding. There will be complete anonymity. On the other hand, one thing that we need to understand, the State Bank of India is a government bank, and the State Bank of India will know all the details about who have been purchasing these electoral bonds, to which political parties they are funding. So therefore, it is also said that the government knows about who is purchasing these electoral bonds and to whom they are actually funding. On the other hand, the citizens and the opposition political parties don't know about these details, and at the same time there will be no cap on the net profit. So no cap on the net profit, that essentially means that the company can fund any amount of money that they want to the political parties. So earlier there was a cap of 7% of the net profits, but after introducing this particular electoral bond scheme, this cap was removed, and this is also criticized. There will be no tracking of sale of bonds. It is also one of the criticism. And apart from that, public does not know, bank knows, finance ministry knows about that, ruling party also knows about that, who donated funds to which political party. Okay, so therefore political victimization of people who have funded the opposition parties, or victimization of the people who have not funded the ruling party, may be a possibility. So after that, amendment in the Representation of the People Act was made, so that is, no single donation level data has to be shared by the party. And after that, amendment to the Income Tax Act, party does not need to file this IT returns. So therefore the Supreme Court has intervened. On February 15th judgment, the Supreme Court has made certain observations with respect to electoral bonds while declaring them as unconstitutional. Now what are those observations? The Supreme Court says that it is violation of Article 19(1) clause A, because the voters will not know about the details of electoral bonds. So because of that reason, it is clear violation of Article 19(1) clause A. After that, the amendments to the Companies Act is considered as unconstitutional. Okay, so amendment to the Companies Act is also being made, and Supreme Court has said that it is unconstitutional. And amendments that are being made to the Representation of People Act, Section 29C, and Income Tax Act provisions were also declared ultra vires by the Supreme Court. So the court also directed State Bank of India to furnish all the details of electoral bonds which are encashed by these political parties, and the Election Commission of India will publish such details in the website by March 31st, 2024. Okay, so these are the major observations of the Supreme Court in electoral bond scheme, and this is what the State Bank of India has done with respect to publishing or providing details of people who have purchased these electoral bonds. Okay, so that's it about this particular article. So next we will discuss about the electric vehicles. So recently India has come up with a new policy. Okay, so India has come up with a new policy, and this particular policy has reduced import duty. Okay, so this particular policy has reduced import duty on the electric vehicles from 70% earlier to 15%. So reducing import duty on electric vehicles from 17% to 70% to 50% will significantly attract the foreign firms who have been engaged in the manufacturing of these electric vehicles. Please understand, India is a country which has been suffering with the problems like vehicular emission based pollution, and India has also been fighting against the climate change and global warming. So therefore, in this context, in order to meet its Paris climate goals and in order to further give a push to the electric vehicle ecosystem, electric vehicle segment, India has slashed this particular import duty on electric vehicle imports. Now we will understand the significance of this particular move in a detailed manner. So we all know that India on Friday, that is yesterday, unveiled a new electric vehicle policy. So that new electric vehicle policy would actually provide the foreign electric vehicle makers such as US based Tesla and Vietnamese based car maker VinFast. So it will provide incentives, or it would incentivize these companies, both these companies, to enter into India's nascent car market, especially nascent electric car market. We do not have a strong, robust electric vehicle market. So far, we have either hybrid market or conventional fuel based market, car markets. So therefore this move particularly aimed at attracting the global electric vehicle car manufacturers. And apart from that, the center has also imposed certain limitations or certain conditions. What are those conditions? The center has said that it would allow the automakers such as Tesla and VinFast to import up to 8,000 electric vehicles per annum. So those electric vehicles must be priced 35,000 or higher every year at the reduced import duty of 15%. So this particular reduced import duty would only be applicable if you import the electric vehicles of the value of $35,000 or more. Okay, so this essentially means that when electric vehicles are allowed for import in India with a lesser price than $35,000, so it would impact the domestic market. So because of that reason, India has set a cap on the import of these electric vehicles. Okay, so the 15% reduction in the import duty would be applicable for this only, for this conditions, 8,000 electric vehicles per annum, and those electric vehicles must be $35,000 or above. So if they commit to investing at least 500 million in the over next 3 years, and apart from that, these companies must invest 500 million, at least 500 million in India over next 3 years, only then this particular import duty would be applicable. This particular reduced import duty would be applicable on the electric vehicle manufacturers, overseas electric vehicle manufacturers. So apart from that, they will also begin the local manufacturing operations and ensure 50% of the domestic value addition in the vehicles that are manufactured in India here by the end of the period. So increasing it to 50% at the end of every 5 years. So the import duty. So this is another condition that is being imposed by the government on the manufacturing of these electric vehicles. Okay, so that essentially means that local manufacturing operations, if you wanted to locally manufacture them, then ensure 50% of domestic value additions in the vehicles manufactured. Okay, so that essentially add domestic component or domestic content in the manufacturing of these electric vehicles. However, one thing that you need to understand is that this particular scheme is implemented by Ministry of Heavy Industries. Similarly, we have a program called FAME, Faster Adoption and Mobilization of Electric Vehicles, and this particular scheme is also implemented by Ministry of Heavy Industries. While Tesla has been negotiating the duty reduction to be available to affordable $25,000 cars or car segment, it is planning to develop markets like India. Okay, so even though the government has imposed a limit of $35,000, but the Tesla has been negotiating that this import duty must be applicable for cars with a value of $25,000. However, it will now likely bring its model number 3, which sells at $40,000 globally, and it will work towards the localizing its operations to kickstart its India entry plans. Please understand, Tesla is not yet entered into India. Okay, so it is not yet manufacturing its vehicles in India. On the other hand, we also have the domestic manufacturers. So these domestic manufacturers won't be adversely impacted by this particular move, importing electric vehicles by the electric manufacturing companies. So it would not impact the domestic automakers significantly, because the government has set a cap of 8,000 cars per year or per annum, and at the same time the government has also set a price point of $35,000. So because of that reason, it will not have any significant impact on the domestic automakers. However, the move is going to send a strong signal of confidence down the entire ecosystem, and at the same time the entry of overseas electric vehicle manufacturers such as Tesla will also bring greater competitiveness in the industry. So if they start introducing those vehicles in India. Okay, so that's all in this session, and thank you so much. Please like the video and also subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thank you.